Ladies and gentlemen, good evening again, and welcome to the 2025 Mary's House Fete for Life. I'm Ben Marshall, again your MC for tonight's event. We would like to begin tonight's Fete with some remarks and a blessing from Bishop Francis Malone. Bishop Malone.
Good evening. So good to be with you. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to support something that is really almost central to our faith in terms of how we treat people who really need us and people who are dependent upon not only our generosity but our care and our love. So thank you all for being here in that spirit. Let's do what we always do at such moments like this, ask God's blessing upon us and upon our evening. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Gracious God, thank you for all the blessings that you have given to us, and the opportunity to be here as a faith community and people who are very concerned about the ministry of Mary's House. We ask your special blessing upon us this evening and upon the work of this wonderful organization. We ask you to touch our minds and our hearts with a generous spirit, and also a great love for those entrusted to our care. Bless our entire evening, bless our conversation, and bless our fellowship, and bless the food which we'll share. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Enjoy your evening.
Bishop. Thank you, Bishop. All right, before we review the dining details of this evening, our rules of engagement, if you would, I'd like to acknowledge several of our guests this evening and ask that they please stand. Now, Bossier City Mayor Tommy Chandler was unable to attend. I think he's probably still celebrating that unopposed re-election he just had. But we do have a mayor hoping also to be unopposed in 2026, Mayor Tom Arsenault and his wife Elizabeth. And we'd also like to recognize Dr. Benny Popwell for his years of service as the medical director of Mary's House. Now, our dinner this evening is provided by Kevin Anderson. And Christy, there's Christy. Christy comes front and center. We would like to ask that you please wait for Christy to invite you to go to one of the serving stations, and please line up from back doors to the front stage to be served. And remember, maybe of most importance to you, the cash bars will close at the end of the dinner service. Enjoy. All right, everyone, we'd like to continue with our program. Please keep eating and drinking. At this time, I would like to introduce Hannah Bork, who is the treasurer and one of the board of directors of Mary's House. Now, Hannah was first introduced to Mary's House through her volunteering as a peer counselor. She was born and raised in Shreveport as a parishioner of St. Joseph, has worked in public accounting as a CPA license, and is currently senior vice president of human resources at Bonvenue Bank. Her contributions to Mary's House are many, but her most important one is presenting a balance sheet at each board of directors meetings, which shows how generous all of you have been. Please welcome Hannah Bork. Break a leg.
Good evening and welcome. We are thrilled each of you is joining us tonight to support Mary's House. I'm excited and honored to be speaking on behalf of Mary's House this evening. Allow me to back up. Honored, yes. Excited, yes. To be sharing the good works God is doing through Mary's House. But excited to be speaking on a stage in front of such a well-attended event, not so much. You see, I would not say that public speaking is a gift of mine or something that comes naturally, as it does for Ben, who is fantastic and a natural at it. But that leads to just what I want to share with you this evening, and that is saying yes. When I was asked to speak tonight, I said yes because while I felt angst, it was the kind that's mixed with excitement. And that kind only comes from God. Being on the heels of the Christmas season, it seems fitting to acknowledge the most important yes that has ever been uttered. That is Mary's yes to the Lord's will to bear God incarnate. Fast forward 2,000 years to Lanciba's yes to God's will for Mary's house, where every woman who comes in the door is treated as if she were Jesus in disguise. Then there's the yes from each of the Mary's House board members to participate in fulfilling our mission, to meet pregnant women's needs at no cost and provide pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, and help getting a doctor, all in an atmosphere of God's love. Of course, let's hear it for each of the pregnant women's yes to walk through the door of Mary's house, where they are inspired with hope to become mothers for the formation of Christian families now and for future generations. And gratitude to each of you for your yes to be at the Fete tonight. These collective yeses have supported wonderful works at Mary's house. I would like to share a few with you. During 2024, 772 patients were served at Mary's house, ranging from 14 to 40 years old. 14 of these women who were abortion determined changed their minds. 2 had had previous abortions. That's 14 lives saved. Just last month, one of our counselors reached out to an abortion-minded patient to gently check on her. The patient texted that she was over 20 weeks along and going to have twins. 2 more lives saved. You see, we should take joyful delight to be a part of such a life-saving and life-giving organization that God has put on each of our hearts to say yes to in some unique way. Thank you.
And that was beautiful. I think we'll sign you up for master ceremonies next year. Our keynote speaker this evening is Shawn Carney. Shawn became active in the pro-life movement while in college at Texas A&M. Shawn was born in Tyler, currently lives in Houston, but he not only talks about pro-life, he actually lives it. With his wife, Mary Lisa, he has 8 children. No wonder he wanted to get away and come to speak to us this evening. Now, Shawn and I share a few things in common. Sure, he's seen and heard internationally on TV and radio by tens of millions. And I'm heard on radio locally by tens of tens. But more importantly, we've both been affected, knowingly and unknowingly, by those with a pro-life belief. Now, Shawn will speak to you about his story and 40 Days for Life very shortly. But if I may steal from Shawn, I'd like to share with you a brief story which I call 100 Days for Life. Now, I got the idea to share this story from our speaker last year, Matt Burke, the NFL offensive lineman. And his message was, that is, being guided by a belief in pro-life can have an impact on life's beginning and also life's end. I should not have been born. Now, why, you ask? All right. I'll take you back to World War II, January 1945. My dad was a ball turret gunner on a B-17. If you ever seen that, it's a little bubble that was on the underside belly of a B-17. If you saw the movie Memphis Belle, it was the Sean Astin character. Now, to be a ball turret gunner was a very involved process, very extensive. Here's what they did. They lined up all the non-coms against the wall. Who's the shortest guy? Marshall, you're the shortest guy, you're the ball turret gunner. He went, thanks, because he'd heard that was the most dangerous position on a B-17. But nevertheless, he started practicing, and he learned that to be a ball turret gunner, you had to literally be in a small compartment in a fetal position to be able to fire the guns at oncoming fighters. To do that, it was so tight, you could not have a parachute on. You have to keep your parachute up in the fuselage when they lowered you down to the ball and then turned it so you could fire at approaching fighters. January 1945, as luck would have it, his crew's on its last mission. Back then, 35 missions, you got to go home. They left England on mission number 35 for a bombing run south of Berlin. Once he got it close to the target, they lowered him into the ball turret. He got the parachute in his fuselage. They cranked it around so that the opening was turned away from the fuselage. He's contained, locked in a fetal position. Here we go. This was during the Battle of the Bulge, and the Germans didn't realize they were losing the war. They were still fighting. They're attacked. A German fighter hits them. 3 of the crew are killed immediately. The plane's on fire. The ball turret's hit. My dad's wounded severely. The ball turret explodes. And because of the heat, his oxygen mask and the rubber and the plastic are melting. He's almost blinded. He says, okay, well, I got to get out of here. He hits the control to cause the ball turret to rotate. He could climb out. Unknown to him, the hydraulic lines had been cut. He couldn't rotate the ball. He's trapped in there. He said, well, this is it. That's it. I'm going down. Enjoyed the life. Then he remembers, well, they got a crank, a mechanical crank that I can turn it and escape. So he turns the crank and then reaches up in the fuselage to get his parachute. There's no parachute. Unknown to him, when the plane caught on fire, the bullets, the shells hit his parachute. It had burned up. All of a sudden, he's pulled out of the ball turret. A parachute is strapped around him, and he's pushed out into the cold German sky. Unknown to him at the time, and only learned later, one of his fellow crew members, unhurt, uninjured, had given up his parachute to my dad so my dad could live. That crew member died several minutes later when the plane crashed. Not to strain the analogy too much, but as my father often said, he was in a womb-like compartment, was pulled out of the womb-like compartment and given life by the parachute of an uninjured crew member, and then pushed out into the cruel world of a cold German sky in 1945. He often told me it felt like he had been born again. Now, you think that'd be it. Well, as luck would have it, as he's descending from about 15,000 feet, the German fighter that had just fatally wounded the plane comes around and gets my dad in his bomb sights. Dad wiped some of the plastic and the rubber off his face. Could see the fighter had got a dead aim at him. Somehow, the fighter misses him. Dad thinks it's divine intervention that the fighter missed him. I think that God knew in 80 years he needed an MC at the Fete for life. And that's why he caused the German fighter to have such bad aim. He lands in a farm southwest of Berlin, badly wounded his leg and foot. He crawls into a haystack and hides, does some rudimentary bandaging, and covers up with hay for the night. The next morning, here comes a German farmer, pitchfork in the hay to feed his animals. Germans weren't that fond of the American flyers back in 1945 because the Luftwaffe had been wiped out pretty much, and they were just bombing every German town and city. So he's pitchfork in the hay. He comes upon my dad hiding in the hay. He raises his pitchfork to stab him to death. Right at that time, a German soldier comes by, fires a pistol in the air, and tells him to stop. He was searching for downed American flyers to gain intelligence. My dad was taken away to a interrogation center and ultimately was given some bandaging. He was severely wounded, so they put him on crutches with pajamas and slippers and put him on a train to take him to a POW camp in Bavaria. It's one of the trains you've seen that they were transporting Jews to concentration camps. Long trip to Bavaria from south of Berlin. About halfway, they stopped. They ordered all the prisoners off the train. They lined them up with their backs against the forest, middle of the night in Bavaria. He said, well, this is it. They're going to just mow us down. They'd heard of massacres, the one in Belgium, about a month or so before. He said, well, this is it. Well, they said no. They marched them to another train. The tracks had been damaged in the bombing, and they found another train and ultimately got to the POW camp. When he arrived at the POW camp, crutches, hobbled, weak, he's a non-com, he's not a pilot, he's not an officer. He said, well, this is it. They're going to throw me in the corner and tell me, to heck with him, let him die. To his absolute amazement, he was the first one taken off the train. He was immediately taken to the hospital of the POW camp, where a very skilled German surgeon saved his leg and foot and probably his life. He was stunned at this act of humanity and respect for life. He could not believe that a German would take such care of an enemy combatant. 100 days later, in late April 1945, he was liberated from the POW camp. A quick postscript. He tried to find the German doctor. Could never do that. I found out the name of the crew member who had died on that day, found his grave, went there, and had a private Ryan moment and knelt down and said, please tell me I've led a good life. He gave his life so my father could live and I could be ultimately with you fine people this evening. If you believe in pro-life, no matter what your age is, high school, college, no matter what time in your life, it will become a way of life for you in which you'll always be moved to follow God's way, no matter what the circumstances. It can result in one soldier giving up his life to save another, and maybe it will ultimately result in saving all the lives for which abortion is thought to be the only option. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shawn Carney.
Howdy. I got to follow that. That was amazing. I'm originally, as was said, from Tyler, Texas. I am a Catholic, a proud Catholic. There aren't many of those in Tyler. It is 2% Catholic. And my father is the oldest of 11. It's a large Irish Catholic family, so I was related to all the other Catholics. And since I left, Catholics have gone from 2% to 6%. And so I think that that's phenomenal. You can laugh at that. It's fine. My mom was born and raised in New Orleans. My stepdad, wonderful man, is from Shreveport, So we grew up coming here. We came to Mardi Gras here. We came to Mardi Gras in Lafayette because there's no way. My mom was taking us to New Orleans. As kids, we couldn't understand why. But Tyler, it's not anymore, but it was a missionary diocese. And I really owe, after that beautiful introduction, my pro-life convictions to the Irish priests who thankfully angered many Irish bishops who sent them to East Texas for the rest of their lives to be priests. And for that, I am extremely grateful. They were very joyful. They were very pro-life. They were a lot of fun. They taught in our school. And they're really the reason that I got involved. One of the first things that I remember going to, I was a sophomore in high school, and they took me to an event like this. It was in Longview, Texas, and a former abortion doctor, Dr. Tony Levantino, was the speaker at this pregnancy center, and he brought his tools. And I just remember being changed forever by listening to this former abortion doctor. And that really set me on a path to learn that the pro-life movement, the reason that we're winning is because it's not a movement made up of a bunch of self-righteous Christians trying to tell everybody else how to live. It's quite the opposite. It's made up of those who haven't experienced abortion from an academic standpoint in an ivory tower. An 8-year-old can be pro-life. This is the most basic, simple intellectual point we've ever had to make. It's not complicated. But the leaders of our movement are those women who have laid on the table and had an abortion. The doctors who have done abortions, the Planned Parenthood workers who have worked in the abortion industry who have converted. It's not a movement of self-righteous religious people. It's a movement of converts. It's a movement of hope. And therefore, of course, it's religious. Because all of our hope has to be in God. And that's what makes the pro-life movement so beautiful, that it is indeed a movement of converts and a movement of hope. Growing up in Tyler, I discerned the priesthood, one of the best things I ever did. It didn't work out. I have 8 children. And apparently it's too late. But having 8 children, I have, which this is recent because I have a freshman in college now. So it's just recent that I've said, yes, I have a preschooler and a college student. And I say it out loud and I'm like, man, that's a big spread. That's a lot of, 8 kids is a lot of kids. And when you have 4 kids, you think 6 is a lot. You're like, well, that's 6 kids. That's a lot. And whoever has 6 kids looks at you and says, that's like 2 more than you have. And then you have 6 kids and you see how many, like 8, that's a lot. I mean, I don't know if we're going to have 8. And I'm not saying this to say we're going to have 10 now that we have 8. But it just happens over time, and it's beautiful, and it's a lot of fun, and some good things happen. For instance, you become immune to noise. We live in Northeast Houston, and the house that we bought about 10 years ago, I guess we didn't really realize it. It's a positive, I guess, for cleanups. But the whole house is wooden floors. So we don't have a vacuum cleaner, okay? And we think this is great. But all the kids live upstairs, and over the living room is like this wooden landing where they play. And so the first few weeks we're there, you just hear these thuds, like boom. And it just sounds like someone's died. It's awful. And so we just spent like the first 3 months of living in this house, running upstairs, checking on the kids to realize like what was broken, who was still alive. And then we got over it because we realized it's just loud. But then we'll have guests over. You know, we'll be in our living room, or, you know, we'll have priests over hanging out, and they'll hear like 2 thuds followed by 3 or 4 screams. And they're like, I'm sorry, I think the KGB is torturing somebody upstairs. Oh, no. The kids are just playing. And then 5 minutes later, I think you should go check on your children. They're fine. You want more cake? So you become immune to noise. You also, this is the charitable side, especially being in Texas, everybody wants to give you their leftovers. It's awesome. You go somewhere and there'll be leftovers at like a group party. And they'll say, oh, give it, y'all take it home. You got all those kids. And you get different versions of that. You get like, you got all those kids. And then you'll also get like kind of the demanding Southern woman, like, darling, take that home to those babies. You're like, yes, ma'am. And then you get like the sympathetic, like, take the rest of the lasagna. I mean, you got all those kids at home. Y'all got leprosy, It's like we're just dying. So that's a positive. But ultimately, it is the absolute joy of having children. And if we don't have children, we don't have a country and we don't have a future. And one of the tragedies, the number one tragedy we have seen in the United States of America and really in the West the last 50 years is the denial that children bring joy, the denial that children enhance your life, and the denial that children don't remove freedom, they give you freedom. That is a great tragedy. It is a very, very sad reality. And it is one that here in the United States in 1973, when we had an all-male Supreme Court, women didn't vote on this, nobody voted on this. It was a mandate from an all-male Supreme Court giving abortion to the United States. And once again, in the history of our country, dehumanizing a segment of our population. The first was Dred Scott, which dehumanized blacks because of the color in their skin. And the second was Roe v. Wade, which dehumanized the unborn, not because of the color of their skin or their gender, but because of their size and location. And we went on a disastrous run where we had 64 million abortions in the United States. And for years, places like Mary's House, places like the 3,000 pregnancy resource centers around the country went to work and they set up. And thank God they didn't wait for Washington, D.C. To correct a moral crisis in their own backyard. They went to work. And for so many years, it was sort of the same thing on the political side of it, which was we need to vote for a president who may one day get an opportunity to appoint a judge that would then be pro-life, that then we could get the right case at the right time and possibly overturn Roe. And that led to just decades of disappointment, frustration, and failure. But that didn't affect you. Here they are coming up on their 10-year anniversary next year. That didn't affect the thousands of other pregnancy resource centers. That didn't affect things like 40 Days for Life going to work in the grassroots. Thank God. So when that time did come, and the most unpredictable thing in the world happened, which is that the gentleman who showed Kevin where the elevator was in Home Alone 2 became president. And he did do that. When he became president, he got not only one, two, but saved the shoo-in, Amy Coney Barrett, just in case he got a third pick, and he picked her, and she was confirmed, and they overturned Roe v. Wade. And when you read the opinion of why they overturned Roe v. Wade, you'll realize they didn't just overturn it, they beat it up with a baseball bat because it was so legally flawed. And on the court level, we once again corrected our error and sent it back to the states. And what is so beautiful about that is that you were ready and we were ready and America was ready, because the pro-life movement in America was built for a post-Roe America. It was not a top-down operation. It was an operation that handles one heart and one mind at a time and saves one life at a time. And that's why your great state, the great state of Louisiana, and other states had, just a couple of years ago, heartbeat bills were controversial. Heartbeat bills. We had to do basic catechesis, which are heartbeats are good. We spend a lot of money keeping our hearts beating. It's a tragedy when they stop beating. Heartbeats are good. And one of the reasons that heartbeat bills were so popular is because so many people, Democrat or Republican, they just didn't want to vote for stopping someone's heart from beating. And that's a good thing. And then the overturning of Roe versus Wade happened. Texas went from 365 abortions a day, 365 abortions a day, to 4 last year total. 4. That is a result of this atmosphere that we have where we were ready. You were ready. You're busier than ever. We need to raise more money tonight than ever because the need is greater. And we want the need greater. When we raise our hand and say, get rid of Roe v. Wade, we're not saying that because we're mad at those who are pro-abortion and we want this horrible law to go away. We're raising our hands saying, and we will bear the responsibility. We needed the Supreme Court to get out and stay out of the dehumanization business so that we can treat hearts and minds and uphold the dignity of the human person. And that's what you're doing. And that's what so many other pregnancy centers and maternity homes, your maternity home is here, are doing. They are up for the task because they weren't built the day after Roe was overturned. They've been here for decades. And that is such a compliment. That is such a beautiful thing. Abortion supporters were not ready. They were not ready at all. And we're seeing that in very odd, bizarre, and sick ways. Because there was just a line in the sand that you must accept abortion through all 40 weeks. There was no exception. And just a few weeks ago, there's this litmus test, which I think shows that obviously we're not like popping champagne and putting our feet up saying, well, Roe was overturned, there's no work to be done. We still live in a very hurting, wounded culture. And that was evident when the House and the Senate voted on this Born Alive Protection Act, which is the easiest thing in the world to support. You're going to give medical care to a baby boy or baby girl who survives an abortion. Okay? In 2008, Planned Parenthood was for this. There was one senator who was against it. His name was Barack Obama, but he was way out there. Planned Parenthood and NARAL were against this. Of course, we're going to give medical care to a baby who survives an abortion. Because we were still in the Bill Clinton, I don't like abortion, I want it to be safe, legal, and rare. That's been annihilated today. And we had half of our politicians, one Democrat in Congress, none in the Senate, vote against a bill that would give medical care to a baby who survived an abortion. Because that was the crime. You're not supposed to survive an abortion. Now, I've already told y'all, I've gotten to witness this 8 times. It's beautiful. You have children, you have grandchildren, you have nieces, you have nephews. There's nothing more beautiful or more nerve-wracking than a baby coming into the world. It's unbelievable. The nurses, we've had so many wonderful labor and delivery nurses, so many wonderful OBGYNs. It's awesome. Everybody is there for the baby and for the mom. This isn't some political position. This isn't redoing I-20 or invading Iraq or not, or healthcare, or saying, that senator is a nut, I can't stand him. That's not what this is. This isn't just a disagreement on a political level. This goes far deeper. What's wrong with us? Just to save face, you have to vote to give care to a baby to survive. This is beyond, we're a divided country. This goes to something much deeper and more broken in our souls, that we feel this allegiance that we have to do this. And our message is, we don't want you. We don't need you. You do need us. We're not helping you. You are on your own. And you can't survive without us. And we're unfortunately right. That baby can't survive without us. That's the crime. And that's the joke of viability. And it's the beauty and brilliance of the church's teaching on the dignity of the human person, that we don't believe life begins at conception. Thomas Jefferson did, Thomas Aquinas did, but we know it because it's 2025 and we can watch it, we can see it, and it's taught in medical textbooks. That's the beauty of it. And it's the great illness of our culture that says we don't care, that we can move the goal line. You're more important at 22 weeks than you are at 12 weeks. You're really more important at 39 weeks than you are at 20 weeks. It makes no sense. We're not mutual funds. We don't get value over time. We don't gain dignity. 2023 was a good dignity year for Bob. He bought Christmas presents for everybody. We don't act like that. We don't act like that. We simply come into existence and therefore deserve protection under the law. And I guess if we're going to be consistent, if we can abort somebody at 6 weeks, then we can surely do it at 22 weeks, and we can do it at 40 weeks. And heck, if they survive, they're not viable. And if living on your own without your mom makes you viable, then I have college buddies that aren't viable. It is one heck of a standard that we put on the weakest among us. Now, I went to Texas A&M University, and all of y'all did as well. Did anybody go to LSU? That was kind of lame, but I know y'all don't. I know we're still out on Brian Kelly. Are there any Longhorns? Okay, one. I'm not even going to make a joke. I feel bad for you. Okay. I went to Texas A&M, and I had never seen an abortion facility. I don't think at the time I actually knew Planned Parenthood did abortions. I was 18 years old, and I remember seeing my peers go in and out having abortions, and it just broke my heart as a young man, as a freshman in college. So I started going out regularly with my then girlfriend. She later became my wife, and we were very involved in the pro-life movement. We saw, very little results, but our numbers were going down as far as volunteers. Our abortion numbers were going up, so we decided that we would do whatever we could for 40 straight days. So we did 40 days of prayer, 40 days of fasting, and 40 days of a nonstop peaceful vigil outside of our local abortion facility. And that was the first ever 40 Days for Life campaign. It was fall of 2004. Our local numbers, abortion numbers, dropped by 28%. So it was great. But we never wanted to hear the term 40 Days for Life ever again. We were really tired. And then a group in Green Bay, Wisconsin called us, and then Seattle, and then Charlotte. So in the fall of 2007, we launched 40 Days for Life as a nationally coordinated effort, hoping we'd get 20 to 25 cities for the fall of 2007. We got 89 cities in 33 states. And so then we did a spring campaign in conjunction with the season of Lent. It ends on Palm Sunday, starts on Ash Wednesday. And so in the spring of 2008, I think it was the earliest Ash Wednesday could ever be. It was like February the 6th or something. And Minneapolis St. Paul did a 24-hour vigil outside of their Planned Parenthood. And just to see the dedication and the hunger that so many people had for 40 Days for Life, we knew that we couldn't quit because that was our first, as God-fearing Christians, we were ready to quit at all times. And the following fall, we doubled our cities. In the first 3 years of 40 Days for Life, we doubled every year in the number of cities. It just rapidly grew, and then the international presence started coming. Canada, I know that's not really another country, but we had England. We had England. We had all of Europe show up, and then our largest growth recently has been throughout Africa and Latin America, where America shamefully has brought abortion to those continents through our government and through Planned Parenthood International. Donald Trump actually defunded Planned Parenthood International about 2 weeks ago. And that whole desire to do something at the local level is what is different about the United States of America, that we feel like we do, that we are our brother's keeper. And as 40 Days for Life grew, of course, we got reports of babies being saved. We got reports of abortion facilities changing their hours. But we started having abortion workers leave their jobs. We've had 266 abortion workers who have had a conversion and left their job. And many of you are familiar with the place where in College Station, Texas, where it started. Abby Johnson was the Planned Parenthood director there. And she was my abortion facility director. And we often did media interviews against one another's points, and we knew each other. We had many productive conversations, some unproductive conversations. But when she was asked to witness her product, and she witnessed a baby, a 14-week-old baby boy fight for his life and lose it, she came right next door and came into my office. And she wrote a beautiful book. They turned it into a movie. I know many of y'all have seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie Unplanned, it is very, very good. It is very, very good. And a lot of Christian movies aren't very good, but this one is very, very good. And the gentleman who made it, Chuck and Carrie, they wrote God's Not Dead. Then they wrote God's Not Dead 2. Then they started working on Unplanned, and I think needed more money, so they went and wrote God's Not Dead 3. Then they realized God was never dying, and they made Unplanned. And I remember I had just heard a rumor that they were making a movie about it. And then they had my cell phone, and they're both, like, Carrie's, like, grew up Jewish and, like, became Catholic. They're from Jersey. You're talking to them. It's like a scene out of the Goodfellas or The Godfather. And they just called, and they were like, "Hey, babe, we're in New York. We're coming to your house." I'm like, "Who is this?" And they came down. They're like, "We want to interview your kids." I was like, "You want to talk to my kids?" "Yeah." I don't think so. But they came down. They had Rudy's Barbecue, and they interviewed us. But then I took them to College Station because in 2013, that abortion facility closed where 40 Days for Life began. There have been 157 abortion facilities that have closed, including Bossier City, as a result of 40 Days for Life. And College Station closed, and a year later, we made that building our headquarters. And we have a beautiful memorial to the unborn in the back. We've remodeled it except for where the abortions take place. That is as is, and we have a former abortion doctor who gives tours to high schoolers and anybody else who comes through the building. And so Chuck and Carrie wanted to go there because they're rebuilding the set to film the movie. So I take them around, and I take them back into where the abortions were done, where Abby witnessed the abortion. And Planned Parenthood had left everything when they moved out. They took the beds, they took everything. But they left in the abortion surgical rooms one thing. At the top of the ceiling, hanging over where the bed was, they had a hook. And hanging on it was a baby mobile. Balloons or streamers. And the reason it was there was to literally at the moment of the abortion to distract the woman from what was going on. It summed up why we need Mary's House, why we need any pregnancy center, why we need a maternity home, because abortion survives on distraction. Whether it be distraction in the way we talk about it, distraction in the way we vote on it, distraction in the media, but even distraction for those who are having it done at the very moment. It's why it's so important that we're physically outside the abortion facilities offering hope before the abortion and offering mercy and healing after the abortion. And Chuck and Carrie, these tough guys were just in that room and they started weeping. And Carrie, whose father is still Jewish, said, this is Auschwitz. And we're going to make this come alive on the big screen. And they made a very, very powerful movie that not only saved a lot of babies, but brought a lot of abortion workers out of the abortion industry, because it's hell working inside of an abortion industry, a clinic. It really is. It really is. We have heard just so many stories, and 9 times out of 10, they leave and they become Catholic. It's like a magnet. I remember when Abby Johnson left, she called me like 2 weeks later and was screaming at me and said, I want to get one thing straight with you. I'm never becoming a Catholic. I was like, okay. I was like, it's very popular. A lot of people aren't Catholic. And I said, but you're probably going to end up one. She's like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I said, no, it's just everybody who says that ends up in RCIA. She's like, what's RCIA? I said, RCIA is like purgatory. Everybody believes in it when they get there. But as 40 Days for Life grew, you were in position, we were in position for something that many people who have been dedicated to this beautiful cause longer than I've been alive never thought they'd see. And that is headlines that said that the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. And it created a new era. And it's an era where we're winning. We're winning because we have the high ground, because the high ground is hearts, minds, and common sense. That's the high ground. That's why the other side was unprepared to talk about abortion. It forced it. It's really easy. It was really good. They had it good for many years. I believe in the law of the land of Roe v. Wade, abortions between a woman and her doctor. Next, please. It's easy. That doesn't work anymore. Now we have to talk about what an abortion is. We have to ask, when is it okay not to have an abortion? Is it ever okay not to have an abortion? What is an abortion? Why did they overturn Roe? It's a beautiful time in our country because the reaction has been so crazy. And it won't always be. They'll correct their error. We've had crazies in our movement before. We corrected that. They're going to correct their error. But when you have which is nowhere to be found anymore, but you remember 2020 where every CEO was trying to come out and beat the other one out to the microphone saying, I'll pay for your abortion. How's that? It's like the loser high school boyfriend. This is the gift that I'm giving you. And it's like, this doesn't even look good. You're like a white male CEO saying, hey, if the secretary gets pregnant, I'll pay to fly her to California. Aren't I generous? HR disaster, total posturing, never happened. What, are they going to fly her to have an abortion? And then when Susie's daughter needs to go to MD Anderson in Houston for leukemia, they're not going to pay for that travel? That was never going to work. And that's why it went away just as quickly as they spouted it out. Because we have the high ground, because we're based on common sense, and we always have been. But ultimately, it's because we're based in the cross. Because of course you can be an atheist and be pro-life. You should be. It's just common sense. You want to defend human beings. But the atheist can't explain what's inside of us that would leave a struggling baby left to die. We can explain that. It's evil. That's the only explanation. That our will is capable of great evil and it's capable of great sanctity. But we have to use it. We have to will it towards good. We have to know what that good is and love it and be willing to sacrifice for it, or we'll ignore it and we'll go the other direction. And knowing what we're dealing with is the advantage we have in a post-Roe America. We know what we're dealing with. You locally have been dealing with it for 9 years, going on 10. 40 Days for Life has been doing it for 21 years. We know what we're dealing with because our missions are more important now than ever before, because this isn't sustainable. This isn't sustainable. You can't be a gift and a blessing in Tennessee, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Florida, Kentucky, and a curse in California that can be discarded. We are headed towards this common sense 14th Amendment where we're all protected under the law. We locked up Kermit Gosnell because he delivered babies and he cut their heads off. It was 3 accounts of first-degree murder. He's in a federal prison. We either need to let him out and apologize, or we need to be consistent. Scott Peterson is on death row. He killed his wife. She was pregnant. 2nd-degree murder. The court named the baby boy Connor. Do we need to apologize to him? It's not consistent. It's not sustainable. But that's because Roe v. Wade's not the end. It's like halftime. It's halftime. And we have our mission ahead of us, and our mission is local. And we can win that, because what we know now that we didn't know then, as the great Toby Keith sang, is that we know that the world did not end the day after Roe v. Wade fell. Whoopi Goldberg told us that it was going to be like the days that she remembers, where she was walking into bathrooms, stepping over dead women who were dying from abortion. Now, I don't know where she was going to the bathroom, but it sounds pretty bad. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. The cliff never came, because the overturning of Roe revealed what we all know and what doctors have said for decades, which is abortion is not healthcare. It's an elective surgery. Outlaw heart surgery tomorrow and see how many people die. Outlaw chemo. See how many people die. Outlaw abortion and see how many people are born, as we see the birth rate skyrocketing. Before I leave you and go eat more of the shrimp, it's a reason to upgrade at this event. The VIP reception, they have fresh Gulf shrimp. I ate about 76 of them. Mother Teresa spoke at Harvard in 1982. And they wanted her to speak on America's role in alleviating poverty, which is probably, who could be better at speaking at that, right? So Mother Teresa talked about that. And they said, America's a wealthy country. You're a poor country. Come tell us like what we need to do. So she gives a great talk on poverty, but at the end of her talk, she pivots, as she often did, and she said she didn't believe that the United States was a wealthy nation. She thought that the United States was a very poor nation because it is a poverty, that a child must die so you may live as you wish, which became a very famous bumper sticker. And that in Calcutta, they had joy, and they found joy in their poverty. Now, there was a wealthy industrialist who heard about this speech and then saw a documentary on 2020 about Mother Teresa. He lived in Florida, and he had no real beliefs on anything. He's kind of agnostic, but he respected Mother Teresa, so he flew over, and he wanted to meet her and see everything. And so he walked around, and she showed him around, and they went into his office, and he sat down, and he wrote her a check for $1 million, and he slid it across the desk. And she looked at it, and she said, "This is so gracious. Thank you. I have to ask, is this a sacrifice for you?" And he said, I don't understand. What do you mean?" She said, "The poor are hurting, and they sacrifice a lot in their suffering, and we sacrifice to serve them. And the volunteers that are here, we want them to have this sacrificial nature about them, to join their sufferings with the sufferings of the poor. Does this check make you suffer? Does it hurt? Does this hurt you?" And he said, "It doesn't. I'll be honest." And she said, "Then we don't want it. We want it. We want you to join us in our mission, not just support us financially." And she slid the check back. So a month goes by, and she gets an envelope from the gentleman. And she opens the check, and it's $25 million. And it had a short message: "Mother, this hurts." Now, in a post-Roe America, with the demand that Mary's House is facing, with your situation in Louisiana where you're essentially abortion-free, but you are having abortion pills still come into your state, where the demand is high, I don't think that they're going to turn down $1 million. They shouldn't. Mother Teresa was a saint. Most of us aren't. But give sacrificially. Give sacrificially, and don't lose perspective. This can happen to me living in Texas, and certainly to you in Louisiana, that it's over, and it's not over. It is the example. It is the absolute example of what we're doing. 26 states are essentially abortion-free or have highly regulated abortion since the fall of Roe. And when Mother Teresa spoke at Harvard, that is exactly how she ended her speech. She said that if America ever has the courage to get back to her roots, then America will end abortion. And when America ends abortion, the world will follow. And we know that doesn't come from Washington, D.C. We know that comes from our local city. It comes from Shreveport. It comes from Bossier City. It comes from Tyler, Texas. It comes from San Francisco. It comes from New York. Of all the abortion facilities we've closed, 45% of them are in blue, pro-abortion states where abortion is celebrated, because it's not built on politics. It's built on hearts and minds. So if we give sacrificially tonight, we can change more hearts, change more minds, and end abortion once and for all in this great nation that we love. God bless you.
Shawn, as you can tell by the reaction, we are blessed to have had your emotional and thought-provoking words this evening, and are motivated by the inspiration of your life and your mission, and thank you for that. But I must chide you, because though you're Catholic, you fail to ask who is here from the preeminent Catholic university in the world, Notre Dame. Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at that. Far more than A&M. So we just want to make sure you're aware of that. All right. Shawn is giving us the prequel, and now we'll go to the main event. It is time for the all-important ask, and I can think of no person better for this most worthy task. Its inspirational words have rained contributions like manna from the heavens. So please welcome our chairman of the board, Mr. Keith Evans. Get your prop.
Well, all right, I'm going to start off a little differently, having been maybe unintentionally egged on by our Master of Ceremonies, Ben Marshall. Who is here from the unofficial largest Catholic university in South Louisiana, LSU? Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Ben. Shawn, what an inspiring and fantastic story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It was wonderful. And to think of all the camps that you have established throughout the world to, I want to say, fight abortion. I like to say overwhelm abortion, and hopefully eventually make it obsolete. That is just fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us tonight. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for being here tonight to support Mary's House. Ladies and gentlemen, you likely remember, if you were able to be with us last year at the Fete, that we had a well-defined goal at Mary's House. Open our doors 5 days a week. To do that, excuse me, to do that, we needed more space. We had a plan, and we had such generous, supportive, willing, and kind donors that we were able to raise the funds necessary to convert our garage to office space. And now we are open 5 days a week. Thank you. And we are seeing more young mothers and their babies than ever before. So I want to say thanks to everyone for helping us accomplish this goal. Y'all are such wonderful, giving people. And I also want to send out a big thank you to Tommy Huddleston and his partner Josh Barrera and Area Builders for doing a fantastic job with the project. I don't know if one or both of those gentlemen are here, but if they are, stand up. Doesn't look like they're here. Well, anyway, they've done a great job. They've really done a great job. With our expansion, we planted a seed, in a manner of speaking, a seed that will yield much fruit. A lot like this apple. Everybody loves apples, don't they? If you're an apple lover like me, you may have heard of Johnny Appleseed. Have you heard of Johnny Appleseed? Now, there really was a Johnny Appleseed. He was a historical figure. His given name was Jonathan Chapman, and he was born in 1774. Johnny was an American pioneer nurseryman who introduced and promoted the apple tree throughout the Ohio Valley. Now, legend has it that Johnny was often heard to say, anyone can count the seeds in an apple, but no one can count the apples in a seed. Have you heard that? Anyone can count the seeds in an apple, but no one can count the apples in a seed. Well, Keith, where in the world are you going with this? Well, at Mary's house, this is my personal corollary to Johnny's saying that would apply on Jordan Street. Anyone can count the babies in a womb, but no one can count the good works in a baby. As you know well, God has a purpose and a plan for every one of us. He knew us all in the womb. Our mission at Mary's house is to do whatever we can to secure God's plans for the unborn in our community. Every day, the wonderful people at Mary's house are performing good works to safeguard the countless future good works that each young life will bring into the world. The book of James says that faith without works is dead. Well, let me assure you that at Mary's house, it is a faith-filled place that is very much alive and that good works abound there every day. Now, while we're on the subject of good works, you have in front of you a pledge card. And it's a pretty simple pledge card. It's got Mary's house has 3 main giving societies. Gabriel's Angels, which is a repeating monthly donation, large or small, whatever you can afford. The Madonna Society, which is a one-time gift of $2,000 or more. And the Vita Society, which is a pledge of $1,000 a year for 3 years to Mary's house, or a one-time donation of any amount you choose. I would like all of you to prayerfully consider pulling that pen up, filling this card out, and dropping it in the envelope and putting it in that Mardi Gras bag. And I would like to borrow Shawn's phrase, think sacrificial giving when you do this. Feel like a parish priest. Think sacrificial giving. There's 3 ways that you can pay for this. You can write a check. You can put your credit card information down on the pledge card, or you can take a picture of the QR code, and you can do all this online, and the QR code allows you to pay by PayPal, by Venmo, and then by credit card. But if you would prayerfully consider a gift, and if you would be so kind as to fill this out, put this in your envelope, and put these gifts in the Mardi Gras bag on your table, somebody will come by at the end of the Fete and pick those up. If you need to take these home and give it some more thought, please do. Please do. We can't thank you enough for your donations, for your kindness, and for everything that you and so many others have done for our mission at Mary's house. Now, let me close tonight by saying this. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many noble and good and decent causes to fight for in this world. But there are few, if any, that allow us to partner with the good Lord to save and preserve a life. At Mary's house, we do that every day. We have blessed to be able to do this kind of work, and we are blessed to have Mary's House in our community. Thank you to Shawn Carney, our fabulous and inspiring speaker, and the 40 Days for Life organization that Shawn co-founded. Thank you to Lan Seba and all of the Mary's House team that worked so hard all year long, and also their special efforts to make this Fete fantastic every year. And thank you to all of you here who are here tonight, and to also many of you who couldn't be here tonight. Thank you for all you do to support Mary's House and her mission. God bless each and every one of you and all the mothers and babies that we work so hard to love and support. Good night.